Welcome everybody to the first DockerCon breakout of the day. This is the Docker track, so hopefully you're in the right spot. This is the track that's mainly presenters from Docker, talking about Docker, showing you some product overviews, things like that. We've got some really great sessions today. So, later today we have Gareth, who did part of the keynote this morning, is going to come back and talk more about some developer things that he's working on besides what you showed in the keynote this morning. If you liked the Docker EE demo with the federated app management, the product manager for that's going to be in here today. We've got a troubleshooting session. We've got a security session. So lots of great stuff in the Docker track today. But we're going to kick things off with Lee Namba. So Lee runs our European consulting practice, and he's going to help you, understand how to build a containerization strategy and get started the right way with Docker. So Lee, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, what did you guys think of the keynote? Did you guys like that? Yeah, it was right. It was cool, right? Okay, so thank you, Jim. So I'm Lee Namba, and I am the EMEA practice manager at Docker. What does that mean? That means I run a team of solution architects, and what we do is we go to our customers and we help them be successful in deploying Docker within their enterprise. So what I want to do today is talk to you about how to build your container strategy. And this is going to be based on a lot of our best practices and learnings that we've had working with our largest customers. Okay, so, all right, you all have dreams, right? And I know this is what you guys are dreaming about. We all want microservices, right? All running in the cloud, all beautifully put together with a service mesh. It all scales, it's elastic. All you guys have to do is sit back and just monitor it and then allow you to dream, about other things, right? But as we've seen with so many enterprises, this is your reality. So you got a bunch of legacy, monolithic applications. Maybe you've got a couple, microservices sprinkled in there. And you might be thinking to yourself, how am I going to get, these applications into the cloud? Now, to make things a little bit more confusing, you have all of these as a services, right? So you've got infrastructure as a service. You got software as a service. You got platform as a service, and now we've even got functions as a service, right? How do you put all of these things together? How are they all going to work together, right? How do I, get all of these applications into these things? And on top of that, you might have a CEO who just loves developers. Those are going to be your customers, right? All right, so but we all know the answer, right? How to do this, and this, since we're at DockerCon, is build out a container platform. So what I'm going to do now is share with you some of the lessons that we've learned working with our largest customers here, such as Liberty Mutual, MetLife, Bosch, Societe Generale, and Northern Trust. Now, they're also going to be doing presentations at DockerCon, so I would highly, highly encourage you guys to go and see their presentations. They're awesome. Okay. So container strategy. Now you might already have people within your company already using Docker, and those are your early adopters, your enthusiasts. We love those people. But what about the mainstream, right? The rest of the people, they might not even know about Docker. So we need to think about how we're going to build a container platform for them as well. And one of the first things you're going to need is you're going to need some money, right, to do that. So let's figure out how we can build a business case and prove the value of why containers would even make sense for your company. Now, once we built this business case, you showed it to your bosses, they gave you a budget, you're happy about that. You're thinking, great, I'm going to go spend all this money, get some infrastructure going, hire a team, get resources, announce to the whole company that we're going to have a container platform ready for them, right? Well, I wouldn't encourage doing that because that's a recipe for disaster. What you should do now is, we're in an agile world, let's get some applications into production first. Let's fail fast, let's fail often, let's learn from those initial learnings, and getting some first applications into production, you're going to figure out a lot of stuff. I've seen this with our customers over and over. Containers are disruptive, but we don't want to be necessarily disruptive to the organization. But there'll be a little bit of things that you'll need to change within your organization, and you'll learn those getting your first apps into production. So once you've done that, then you think, okay, now we can just open it up to the rest of our company. But you probably have to put in a little bit more governance around your platform before opening it. So we'll talk about things you need to do, like such as training, support, service level agreements, operating models, before you actually go to production at scale. And hopefully once you've onboarded all of these applications, they'll start to realize their return on investment. And what can you do with all of those cost savings then is you can finally innovate. So if you've done your applications on premise, now you can start to migrate those into the cloud. So I'd really suggest first containerizing things, even if it's on premise. Moving it to the cloud makes it a lot easier. We saw that with our demos this morning at the keynote. And as well, if you already have legacy applications in the cloud that you've Dockerized, then you can start to break those up into microservices and refactor your code. It'll all be a lot easier once you've done it in a container. Okay, so now for the rest of this talk, I'm going to go in a little bit more detail on each of these stages of your container strategy. Okay, so first thing, proof of value. Let's build a business case, right? Now we saw already, I'm not going to go through this in detail, you'll save money on capital expenditures, containers are more efficient, operational expenditures as well, containers make everything faster, deployment, testing, it just goes faster. But I want to highlight, for a lot of our customers, the most important thing is agility. And this means getting to market faster. They need to get new features out before their competitors, and that'll allow you to capture new markets and be a player. You don't want to miss out on that. And so that last piece, which is agility, can really make a huge difference for your company. So think about, when building your business case, why you want to do this, and it might even be a combination of all three of these different factors. Now next is applications. So even though you think, all right, this is a great idea, we're going to save money or we're going to be more agile, what do I have to work with here? So this is like a magic quadrant where on the bottom axis we have stateless applications, stateful applications. On the vertical axis is standalone or clustered. And not all applications are created equal. Some of them on the top are easier to migrate, so this would be your stateless standalones. And other ones are a little harder, so once we start to get into more stateful applications, requires a little bit more effort. And then finally, the hardest ones are going to be your stateful and clustered applications. So these might be, like your Oracle racks or your multi-master, Postgres, those kinds of applications. So figuring out what order we want to do it, let's go after the low-hanging fruit first and develop out a strategy once you're looking at your entire application estate. So how do we do that? Well, let's create a scorecard. Now on the scorecard, what's going to be important is figuring out what criteria are important. And each company has different criteria. I've talked to so many of our customers. Some of them need, to be, they're really concentrated on saving on costs. Other ones, they need to get one critical application into production at a certain date, so it's a marketing milestone for them. You need to figure out what criteria is important for your company. As an example, deployment frequency. You might have an application that's super easy to Dockerize, right? But it only gets updated once a year. Is that really worth Dockerizing? Versus an application where you're deploying it 10 times a day. That's a perfect low-hanging fruit, high ROI. Let's Dockerize that application. Another example is a number of environments. So if you have an application that you might have just a simple test environment and then straight to production. But if you have an application that's a little more complicated and it has to deploy through, let's say, integration, functional testing, performance testing, robustness testing, staging, pre-production, all the way out to production. And sometimes you even need to maintain several versions of older applications. That could add up. I've been on projects where we had to deploy to 11, 12 different environments. And we Dockerized those, and that just made everything so much easier. So that would also be a really good criteria to take into account for getting good return on investment. And then finally, some criteria is not only technical. Think about your culture and of your teams. So I've seen teams where they're kind of stuck in their ways. They're going to be a little bit harder to bring along. Your first apps, you might want to look further. Your more agile teams, the forward-looking ones, you'll just have a lot easier time. So please, you got to take that into consideration when you're building out your scorecard. And there are other criteria out there, but I just wanted to highlight some of the important ones that we see. So once you have your scorecard, you can now start to build out your business case. Now, once again, it's gonna take some investment. None of this comes for free. So, but immediately you'll start to see some returns with that first core team. And what is that? It's building up your skills, your team competence. And why is that important? Well, it actually motivates people. It's new technology, and it helps with retention for your top talent. And then once you start to get those first applications in production, immediately you'll see the return on for example, your development cluster. You'll get your CI/CD up and running a lot faster. All of your testing will go faster. Those first couple of applications, they'll already see a nice return. And even as we get closer to production at scale, if you do have applications that deploy to many environments, you'll already start to see the operational savings. Just because, since it's a lot easier to deploy, you won't need a large team, the resources will be less, you can automate things a lot easier, so you'll start to really see those operational expense savings almost right away with your first apps in production. And then once we do onboard more and more applications, that's where the capital expenditures really start to come in. Your number of servers will go down, and all of the associated licensing costs and maintenance with all of those servers, you'll start to see as well. Okay, so building a return on investment business case, very important, so you can get funding for your container platform. Now, once you've done that, let's get that first couple of applications into production. So as I said before, do we just run out and buy a whole bunch of stuff? No, we want to crawl, walk, run, and not go over a waterfall like this guy. So to get those first apps in production, we've developed a deployment methodology here at Docker and through working with our customers. We start with a POC, and once we've usually done a POC, it's most of the times it's on throwaway type of infrastructure, but we've proven that container or some of their applications can be containerized. Then we move on to an assessment. And what we do there is we measure the maturity levels of our customers' teams. We choose a pilot application. We even do some core training for the team, and then we do a kickoff. And we launch into 4 different work streams. Now, the bottom work stream is probably the most important one. It's the governance work stream. And what this is everything that's non-technical. These are things like I mentioned before, your support, your training, your operating model, service level agreements, even marketing. These are the things that we found with our customers take the longest. It's not the technical stuff. The next work stream is the platform. So this is for the ops people. This is actually deploying your clusters, making sure they're highly available, disaster recovery, and they're integrated already into your infrastructure. The third work stream is the pipeline. This is your CI/CD systems and making sure that you have a secure supply chain all along the way. So we scan the images, we sign the images, and then we promote them all the way out to production. And then the final work stream is your actual applications. So this would be Dockerizing your applications, Docker Compose, stack files, and deploying them using the pipeline onto the platform, hopefully following your operating model that you defined in your governance work stream. And once all of those are complete, you can go live with your first app. And then those bottom 3 work streams form the basis for what we call your container platform service. And then when you need to onboard their next application, the only thing you need to do is run the top work stream. So you can run that over and over and over. And that's how we build the basis for getting your first application into production. Oops. All right. So now we've got that first app in production, we can start to go big. So let's scale this thing up. But before we do that, you learned a lot with those first applications. And now I want you guys to take a step back and think about your organization of your company, because this can directly affect what you're going to build and actually how you're going to build it as well. As an example, if your company is highly centralized, or if your company is decentralized or distributed, you might have different ways of thinking about how and what services you want to offer. As an example, if you're a centralized organization, you might want to just do a simple multi-tenant, one big cluster, and all your teams on board to that. Whereas if you're decentralized or you have subsidiaries, they might be used to a bring your own infrastructure type of situation. So in that case, what you'll do is you'll provide the clusters and the know-how, but they'll provide the infrastructure. So this is more of what we call clusters as a service. And how do you tie all that together? Well, you can use the Docker Trusted Registry to distribute your enterprise images across all of those different clusters. And some companies, they even do a combination of both. How that works is you start with a development cluster that's centralized, multi-tenant, and then as they move to production, then what they want is they want something that's more isolated, more secure, and they'll go to clusters as a service. So you can even do combinations of those. And containers can even change the way in which you deploy new software within your organization. So a lot of companies, you have a centralized CI/CD. It might not be in containers. So you have a master agent cluster, and this works well, except inevitably you run into plugin hell. What is that? That's where one team wants a plugin for your centralized CI/CD, and another team needs another plugin, and they might not be compatible. So I think we've all been there where Jenkins is down again, or that could be a problem. So what containers allow you to do is they allow you to actually deploy it in different ways, such as going to a distributed CI/CD. So how this works is you put your master and your agents in containers, you distribute them through the Docker Trusted Registry, and you basically give each team or each subsidiary their own cluster. And we have a customer, Société Générale. They've done this very successfully, and they use this now to do a lot of building of their applications, and it's been extremely successful to them. So really think about how this fits to your company's organization. Okay, so now we've thought about what we're going to deliver to our customers. So let's take it another level and talk about service classes. So one environment you can provide is a sandbox. So this would be great for training, let people play around with Docker. This is for your new people. And this could be an environment that's maybe low performance. It doesn't need to be highly available. So we're not going to do any backups necessarily. And then the next level of service might be for your development. Now here, once again, let's think about a multi-tenant, centralized environment, and people will do their CI/CD pipeline on there. They'll do their testing. You might need more storage for this environment, and it will be shared between all of your development teams. Now, once they get more serious and they're ready to go to production, then we can have a production environment or production service level. Now, at this point, it might be for their internal applications, and we need to make sure it's highly available, disaster recovery is in place, it's higher performance, it's secure, and we provide some level of support for this production platform. And then the highest level will be for your mission-critical applications. Now these might be your externally facing ones. If they go down, it's really bad. You're going to need, at this point, your highest availability, highest performance, completely secure. And you might even consider providing a white glove service to these applications to help them onboard and also make sure that they have business critical support. So 24/7, follow the sun. So think about different service classes that you want to offer to your customers. Okay, so we've analyzed our application portfolio with a scorecard. We know what we want to build for our customers. We know also what service levels to offer them, so we can start to build out a migration plan. So we've got our first applications in production, and the next level might be, okay, let's go for those highest ROI applications. And let's go for technology stacks that are stable. And for now, let's keep it to local teams so that we can support them in case something goes wrong. The next phase, as an example, might be, all right, let's extend this out now. So let's go for an entire business line. And they might be, very strategic towards containers and using Docker. And then let's open up our technology stacks. So instead of just the safe ones, let's move it and let's open it up to another one. And finally, open up the geography. So not just local teams, but we can start supporting other geos. Once those are onboarded, then you can go for a general availability. And this will be open to everybody, all tech stacks, and all geos. So this is an example of a migration plan that's phased to onboard all of your applications. But like anything, we can always have a plan, right? So all we have to do is just build out and scale out our container platform, and all of these applications will come running in, right? Well, it's not true. If you build it, they will not come. So, you got to get the word out. Marketing. A lot of people forget about this, but this is a real concern for new technologies that you're trying to introduce into your enterprise. We've talked to many customers. They say, for example, with big data, they tried rolling out a big data offering, and nobody adopted it. It fell flat. It's because it wasn't positioned correctly. It wasn't supported correctly. So you got to really think about how you're going to market this. So some ideas. You guys all saw the big whale balloon here in the entry hall. Well, you can do the same thing at your company. Put a big whale balloon. As developers come into work, they'll look up and they'll say, "Whoa, what is that thing?" "Oh, it's Docker." Hand them a flyer, and then they can go and immediately start playing around on that sandbox environment that you guys created. Another idea is to have a Docker day. So we can have somebody from Docker come, give some general information to all of your teams, and even take some of your early adopter teams, and they can come up on stage and show the returns that they've already had using Docker. We have a champions program. So one of those enthusiasts within your company could become a Docker champion, and they could run technology workshops and start to evangelize within your company. And then finally, there's swag, right? Everybody loves swag, t-shirts, stickers. Now that one on the bottom in the yellow circle, this is from an actual customer. They took their logo and they took the Docker logo and they did a mashup. And they created stickers and they distributed that within their company. And so I thought that was a great sort of guerrilla marketing campaign within their company to get the word out. All right. So now I want to talk a little bit about governance. So you've built and scaled out your container platform. You've done your marketing, internal marketing, and you might have even asked your CEO to make an announcement at the company meeting. So, but still, what is the onboarding experience going to be like for all of these teams that are coming on board? Okay, so we already talked about marketing and service level agreements. What other things are we going to need? Okay, we're going to need, once they come on board, we're going to need to train them. And even though the training might be good, they might have run into problems. We all do. So we're going to build up some support. And the teams are going to know, well, what are they responsible for and what are you responsible for? So figure out what, your operating model is going to look like. And then finally, once they do onboard, how do they share the knowledge that they've gained with other teams that will come beyond them? So I'm going to touch on each of these other topics right now. So training, this is what Docker offers today. So we have 100 level, 200 level, 300 level courses, fundamentals, development, operations, security, troubleshooting, and updates. But I don't want to talk too much about that. I think the more important thing, and we heard it earlier in the keynote today, is culture change. All right, so how many people here know about pets versus cattle? You guys heard this analogy? Okay. So for the people who haven't heard about this, I'll explain it really quickly. The old way, sort of traditional way of doing things is you treat your servers or applications as pets. So when they get sick, they break down, you try and nurse them back to health, and you even name them. And the new cloud native way of managing your servers or your applications is to treat them anonymously and make them almost redundant. So if something goes wrong, basically you just kill it and then you bring up a new one, okay? So that's the whole pets versus cattle analogy. Now, the only thing, so I love this analogy, but in this picture, the only thing that's wrong with this is I think the girl is a little bit too young and that dog looks a little bit too happy, right, to be a server in application. This is more like reality. So these are most of like the servers and apps that I know. They're old, they're smelly, who knows what's living on them. And there's some old crusty guy, right, who knows exactly where to scratch the hidden spots to keep this thing alive somehow, right? Okay, how are you going to change this guy's culture? That's going to be hard, right? Can you teach an old dog new tricks? So this has happened in several of our customers. What happens is we containerize an application, a legacy application, and inevitably something happens, goes wrong. So what they want to do is they go back to their old patterns and they say, well, let's debug the application. So they go into the container, they start debugging it, they find what's wrong with it. Then they actually want to patch the container. And then they start adding more and more patches to the container. So they're still in that old mode of thinking, more in the pets. I haven't seen anybody name their containers yet, but they almost want to do that. And what we have to do is get them out of that and say, no, what we do is let's kill that container, bring up a new one so that your service is still running. Let's take the sick container, let's take it offline, let's look for root cause, let's fix it, and then let's introduce the patch into the new image. And then we can then deploy that new image into their cluster. So getting them into that culture change can be a difficult thing, and it can take a couple times. One customer it almost took months just to get them into that new mindset. And this could change their run books or their playbooks. So also think about, beyond just technical training, your teams and how their culture will be changing. All right, now I'll talk about operating model. So depending on what type of culture you guys have in your organization, that could also affect what operating model you put in place. So some activities we have are traditional is you code, you deploy, you run. Now with Docker, you're going to, and so your dev team probably do the coding, hand it over to the ops team, and then they deploy it and they run it. This is a pretty classic operating model. Now Docker introduces another activity to that is the Docker. You got to Dockerize your applications. Now who's going to do that? So if you don't want to interrupt your operating model, you can have a separate team. Might be a DevOps team. So dev team codes, hands it over to a DevOps team. They Dockerize it. They hand it over to the ops team. Nothing changes to that operating model. But if you're already a little bit more shifted left, you might want to then say, okay, let's keep the development and don't touch that. And our DevOps team, they might be automated. So let's put everything in a CI/CD process before handing over to the ops. So what would happen there is the dev team, they code, they check it in, then CI/CD process picks that up, builds, runs all the unit tests, does testing, Dockerizes it, containerizes it, even deploys it, and then the ops people, now all they do is they do the run and monitoring. And then finally, if you're already quite shifted left, you're already in your DevOps transformation, then this is just another step for the team to do. So depending on if you have a more siloed culture today, or you're already more advanced in your DevOps culture, this can affect your operating model. And you can even, choose to have different teams run under different operating models. I've seen that as well. Some other cases that you might encounter are end-of-life applications. So there might not even be a development team anymore. In this case, you don't want to interrupt your operations team. Create a DevOps team, they'll do the Dockerization, and then they can hand it over to the ops team. Another case is if you have lots of applications. So if they're all done in the exact same way, you can even think about automating that process. So we have some tools, Docker Application Converter, that could help with that. Or if they're not all done in the same way, you can think even about externalizing all of that process. And if even, you can extend that even to the operations of this container platform. So think about different ways and your different applications that you have. All right. Now, the last topic is support. So you have all of your development teams now. They're all Dockerizing. They're gaining some returns on their investment. So first level might be, a wiki, right? People say, okay, here's how you Dockerize. Here's where your accounts. That's where you get your client bundles, all of this stuff, and all of that knowledge can be in a wiki. But once they run into problems that are a little bit more complicated, they're going to need to call somebody. So they need a hotline, chat. Who's going to pick up the phone to help these teams? And if those support teams, they don't know the answers, who can they call? So this is my shameless plug for our enterprise product. If you buy Docker Enterprise, we offer business day and business critical support. So your teams can then call our support teams, and we're right there to help you with those critical issues. And then finally, for your mission critical applications, then let's do 24/7 follow the sun. So build this out to around the world. And also think then about local language support for your customers. Okay, so that's support. Now once we put in place all of these governance pieces, then we can go ahead and even rebrand this, for example, a center of excellence. Okay, so hopefully now you've gotten all of your teams onboarded. They're getting their return on investments. They're saving money. So what can they do with that? So now would be the time where they can start to innovate. So we saw in the keynote innovation. There's all sorts of new workloads out there that we're seeing, and as our CEO Steve Singh pointed out, it's really you guys that are going to be doing the innovation here. So think about new workloads that you can bring on to your platform. So serverless, IoT, edge. And one interesting thing is once you have a container platform in place, any new types of technologies that are coming on board, you can be able to adapt them very quickly and deploy them. And if you already have, for your traditional applications, once again, you can then either take them to the cloud or you can start to refactor them into microservices. Okay, so to recap, your container strategy is first, let's prove the value, build a business case. Let's get those first applications in production, put in the governance piece, maybe build up a center of excellence, and then onboard all of those applications and get your production going at scale. And then with those savings, now you can go and start to innovate and move to the cloud. Now if you do all this, hopefully you'll realize your dreams and you'll even make your CEO happy. Okay, thank you everybody. Don't forget to vote on your app.
You want to do some Q&A?
Sure, and we can take some questions.
Anybody have any questions? I got a microphone. I'll try and run and find you or come up this way. No, everybody wants to get lunch. Oh, I see.
So you talk about the platform and infrastructure and function as a service. Have you done anything on the database as a service? And what was your strategy?
So the question was new workloads, and you mentioned database as a service?
Yes. Data as a service or data?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Database as a service or data as a service?
Yeah, okay, so on database as a service, we haven't, there hasn't been, that I know of, I mean, there's obviously been customers that are working on database as a service, but it hasn't necessarily been a really hot topic for us today within our customer base that I have seen. But I know that there's obviously some work going on those fields.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
Any others?
Oh, question over there. Jim over here.
I honestly get talking about working with developers and getting that, but that's kind of like selling, or handing water to someone who's sweating. It's not a hard sell. Developers like what Docker does. But I'd like to be able to see more, especially from the architecture side, presenting it to the business, because at some juncture we have difficulty now defining exactly what is a server, what is a device. So telling people, hey, this is going to change the world, well, they've heard that all from us before. But being inside there, I'm like going, no, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
So in all honesty, I'd like to hear more on how do I actually talk to the outside versus talking to the inside.
Yeah. Well, so we do hear those concerns, and that's why we even have some people which help build business cases for our customers and for even their customers. And it's all about, going through the analysis, going through the application portfolio and saying, okay, here's how you can save money. And a lot of it, they do want to see those, return on investments. And we have modeling and abilities that we do, and we can build out spreadsheets for you. So we do have people available at Docker to help you do that.
Well, sometimes it's really frustrating trying to explain when a VM quits being a VM and when it starts becoming a container, especially to someone in accounting. But unfortunately, they have that magic pen that creates the project to begin with. So this becomes more of a concern. That's what I'd like to hear and see more of, because to explain to these people, it reduces OpEx. That sounds great,
right?
But everything does. I mean, we could tell you we're buying a new broom to reduce OpEx. Sure. Well, but I would like to start seeing more of that solid, rubber meets the road. Here's how you present it to the non-technical people. When people ask what's Docker, my eyes start to glaze over going, okay, how do I explain it's not a server?
Right.
Exactly. And those are the people who are actually the power and stakeholders.
Exactly.
And from an architecture point, that's the ones who I need to talk to. I guess that's not a question at all, and I apologize for that.
No
so
problem.
much of a statement, and but to that, that's
it's a great concern, and what we can do is we can we can work with you, and I mean we have all sorts of collateral to help. How do you pitch that to your business stakeholders?
Start having use cases. That would be great. Here's use case for this, use case for that. And then we could start saying, this actually looks like this. Use case templates.
Yep. Yeah, there's in here tomorrow actually. So MetLife is going to be up on stage, and he's going to walk through. Jeff Murr is going to walk through here's how I done my own business case. Here's what the actual savings were, and here's how I justified it to my VP and his senior whatever, right? So I think the customer sessions will be really good because there's a lot of them that focus on that. There's a panel discussion. I can't remember the title, but it's got PayPal and Splunk and MetLife, and they're talking about how they got started in the strategy they used to really sort of sell it to exactly what you're talking about, selling it back to the business.
Right, to the people who write that check.
Write the check, yeah, exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hopefully this is quick and painless. Are these slides going to be made available?
Yes, they are.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.